Greetings all, this is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we have another list video for you with 5 must-read paperback collections. I often review omnibus and other hardcover editions, but I know there's a whole fan base out there that really likes the trade paperback format. I, for one, have always enjoyed it. I think when I started collecting, I definitely got more paperbacks than hardcovers, and I still enjoy reading a good paperback to this day. And frankly, there's so many great titles that have yet to be released in hardcover in any format, and I wanted to do a list of 5 really good ones I could highly recommend. But before we do, just want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, check out their website. You can find their link in the description to this video, and you can use my code, TheComicBookReport, at checkout to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a great way to support the channel. Thanks for considering, and now let's get started with today's list. First up, I had to include Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis. This is really on track to be my favorite read of 2023. Yes, this comic book came out before then, but I had the opportunity to first read this book earlier this year, and it blew me away. I even went in with super high expectations after hearing so many other friends in this community really shout out how great this book is, and yet I was still floored by the quality of this title. A fantastic standalone miniseries. We really have a book that's great for new readers of Supergirl or presumably longer-term fans. This is a really good science-faring interstellar adventure starring, of course, Supergirl and a really eclectic, interesting group of characters. At its core, it is a coming-of-age story. It is a story about identity. It's a revenge narrative. It's all of this in one. But I walked away feeling so much hope, a deep appreciation for characters like Supergirl, and really just fascinated at how well this pushed the medium forward, especially in a comic book from the big two, Marvel or DC. Really a stunning work of fiction here. The prose was lyrical, almost like poetry in some ways. I think the narrative was just absolutely wonderful. I was completely spellbound by the artwork from Evely. I'd never seen anything like it. It had kind of a dreamy, animated kind of quality to it that I found spellbinding. I believe at the time of this recording, you can really only find this in paperback. There is not an oversized hardcover for this yet. I would love to see this in an oversized hardcover, absolute edition, something like that down the road. I do believe it deserves a collection like that, but for right now I had to include it on a great paperbacks list such as this one. Do not miss out. If you're even a comic book fan in general, maybe you don't even like superhero comics, still pick up this book. It is amazing. It is everything that people say about it and so much more. I would never have appreciated it the way I did without just diving in for myself, making my own conclusions. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Have to check out Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Next on my list today, Dark Ages by Tom Taylor over at Marvel Comics. This is a really fun miniseries that does something that I think plays to a lot of Tom Taylor's strengths, which is basically put him with familiar characters in a unlimited sandbox, kind of Elseworlds, non-continuity kind of storyline, for him to just completely play with these characters in whatever way he sees fit. I'm looking at you, Injustice and Deceased. This is kind of in that camp, but over at Marvel Comics this time. This is kind of a dystopian sort of storyline where basically the Marvel Universe is basically wrecked in a way it's never been wrecked before, and we have this kind of dystopian future that communications between different factions of humanity are limited. We're kind of rolled back to, well, the Dark Ages. Technology doesn't really exist anymore. We have a remnant of heroes and villains left from the mainstream Marvel Universe, and therein lies a lot of the central conflicts that we explore in this miniseries. I will say I don't know that this book is quite as effective as something like Deceased or Injustice. That being said, I am such a Marvel fan that I had to give this a read, and I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it deserves more credit than it maybe is given. I don't hear enough people talking about it, and I thought the world was so lived in and immersive and interesting that I'm surprised we don't get more titles in this universe. No, instead we have a self-contained little miniseries here. It does not feel overrushed in my opinion overall, and it's really fun. I think if you're a fan of the Marvel Universe, seeing Tom Taylor play in the sandbox he creates is really a blast. You see some characters, both heroes and villains, in ways you've never seen. Why I wanted to include it on this list is, one, it's only available in paperback or single issue, no hardcover for this yet to my knowledge, but it's a lot of fun, and I think Tom Taylor is becoming just such an amazing name in comic books. I know I'm quite fond of his run at Nightwing and some of these other books I've mentioned earlier, like Injustice and Deceased, and I think because of that, I'm surprised that this book doesn't get more love. It really is a ton of fun, and one I would highly recommend for a great paperback collection. And hey, while I have you, if you enjoy comic book list videos like this, comic book reviews, unboxings, haul videos, and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I highly encourage you to do so. I definitely appreciate having you around. Thank you for considering. Now on with the list. Next up, if I'm talking about great paperback collections, of course I have to talk about Birthright by Williamson over at Image Comics. For whatever reason, at the time of this recording, this has yet to receive a compendium, a hardcover, an omnibus, anything like that, and this collection is complete over there at Image. It's a really fun contemporary fantasy series about a boy who gets lost in the woods and finds himself in some kind of otherworldly fantasy universe. He then emerges as a grown man after only, I think, a year passes in our world, and there's all sorts of interesting fantastical elements that are then introduced into our world. This is a really interesting family, character-driven drama that has a lot of, like I said earlier, fantasy to it. This is a great paperback collection. I wanted to include it on this list because, again, there is no hardcover out yet for this series, and I think Joshua Williamson has definitely developed quite a following in recent years. I know I've reviewed a couple things that he's done. I think Robin, maybe Batman, as well as, I don't know if I've reviewed it yet, but his run on The Flash. He's done a lot of really good things over at the Big Two, but this series he has over at Image is something else. Admittedly, I'm still making my way through this series, but I've thoroughly enjoyed what I've read thus far. Like I said, a great character-driven contemporary fantasy with a lot of just realistic elements, even within the fantastical. Really enjoyed this book. I am shocked we don't have any kind of deluxe treatment yet. Hopefully that's forthcoming, but at any rate, if you're looking for a great, cheap trade paperback to get into, maybe a series that, you know, it's a little bit outside of the normal Marvel DC fare, if you have a flair for the fantasy, this is definitely a series I recommend. The art throughout it is absolutely gorgeous and spellbinding in its way. I think the characters are really interesting. I think that the narrative so far, the plot line, isn't too predictable or samey as far as I can say that. I really enjoyed the cast of characters. I think that they really have a good kind of feel to them. The world feels very developed and lived in, I guess both worlds I should say, and I just have had a blast with it so far. Have to recommend Birthright by Joshua Williamson. Next on our list, Wolverine by Greg Rucka, the Ultimate Collection paperback. I will say at the time of this recording, this collection is currently out of print, but I include it because I don't believe this was ever included in a hardcover edition, and frankly, I'm a huge fan of Wolverine, and I do enjoy this run. I think Greg Rucka is a fantastic writer, and I do think that this run gets overlooked, and I'm not really sure why. Perhaps because these collections are long out of print. That being said, you can still find a book like this on secondary marketplaces like Amazon or eBay sometimes. I really enjoyed this book. In fact, it has my favorite single issue of Wolverine. I know I've done a video on that before. I just find this book absolutely amazing. The start of the run in particular is something I will never forget when I first read it across these pages. And this book overall, I'm just shocked we haven't seen it in some kind of hardcover, especially with how popular Wolverine is, and his legacy is still getting more and more popular. Shoot, we're getting so many omnibuses from Wolverine lately. I would have loved to see at least a deluxe edition or something for this book. That being said, I do like that we have an Ultimate Collection. We have the entire Rucka run in this paperback. I don't think I've reviewed this entire collection. I've reviewed, like I said, the first issue in this book. If you would like to see me cover this whole book, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do a full review of this at some point. I almost didn't put it on the list since it is out of print and hard to get copies of, but I figure there's people out there that are looking for recommendations a bit off the beaten path, and some people don't mind buying used from secondary marketplaces, and so maybe this is a book that could have your name on it. I know I, for one, enjoyed the kind of realistic Wolverine traveling across the country kind of narrative we got in this run. I loved the beginning as well, as I mentioned before. I think the art throughout it is really fantastic. The covers are absolutely gorgeous. They have kind of a pastel painted feel to them, really evocative and interesting. And overall, I do like seeing a good Ultimate Collection. I know a lot of those are done in paperback, same with complete collections over at Marvel. And so this is just a really good one to have. I think it's a great great paperback. You can read it without really needing much backstory. You can kind of just jump in and get a full run experience. I think Rucka is in rare form, and this is definitely a book I think about often. And last but certainly not least on my 5 great paperback collections video, Silver Surfer Thanos Quest, the Epic Collection from Marvel Comics. Now, Epic Collections are a format from Marvel Comics that I've covered a couple times on the channel. Basically, they're chronologically ordered collections of about maybe 20 issues or so that chronicle kind of all of the appearances from a given character or title. These Epic Collections are released out of order, but presumably when they all hit print, if you collect all of them, eventually you'll have a continuous run start to finish. I picked Thanos Quest because this was one of my favorite standalone Epic collections. It has some great Thanos stories, obviously, kind of some good things around the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, some great standalone Silver Surfer action as well. This is really the book that made me a huge Jim Starlin fan and all of the stuff he does over in the cosmic Marvel side of the universe, but this book really was what broke it open for me. I do just love the Epic Collection as a format. It is a standard size paperback. They run usually around 400 to 500 pages, give or take, and I think they're usually really well done. I love the Silver Surfer line. I think we have tragically few hardcovers and omnibuses for Silver Surfer. I know I have his initial Silver Surfer omnibus from Stan Lee, and I have that Dan Slott all-red omnibus that I really love as well, but I'd love to see the Starlin era collected in omnibus format. Right now, frankly, we don't have a ton of format options for classic Silver Surfer stories, but I do think amongst them, the Epic Collection might be my favorite for releasing some of these gems. I do think that this is definitely a worthwhile read. This is early, kind of great cosmic era Marvel adventures. I love the Silver Surfer. He's philosophical, he's interesting, and it really doesn't even feel super connected to the Marvel Universe in many ways, and I think that that's a strength for a character and collection like this. This is definitely a trade paperback I've recommended. I know I've done a whole video on this, but I wanted to showcase it not only for a great character, a great run, but also a great format for the paperback format in general, that being Marvel's Epic Collections. You'll have to let me know in the comments below if you enjoy Marvel Epic Collections, maybe throw out some recommendations as to what are your favorites. I know my most recent one I've read was the Punisher Circle of Blood Epic Collection, which was definitely a fun time with some of those 80s Punisher stories, but at any rate, this is what I'm recommending today. Definitely check out Silver Surfer Thanos Quest. And that's about going to wrap us up for 5 must-read comic book paperback collections. This again was a video I've thought about for a while now. I know that so many collectors out there prefer to see the hardcovers, absolutes, omnibus treatment, but there are so many comic book fans out there that enjoy a good paperback, especially if that's the only way these issues are getting released. I also know that this is a much more budget-friendly option for a lot of collectors out there that want to have physical copies of these books, but maybe don't have enough for some of those omnibus editions. I know being on a budget myself, I definitely feel the pinch of that from here to there as well. These are definitely a format that I really enjoy. I think the Epic Collections in particular are definitely a noteworthy paperback collection from Marvel that I would always recommend. But in addition to all these other books as well, some great reads here. I'd love to hear in the comments from all of you, what are some only paperback released comic books that you enjoy that you think are worth recommending? Have you read some of these I pointed out today? What are your thoughts on that? Again, always love feedback from all of you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, and maybe share with a friend. Have a good one.